Good morning, everybody.
30 minutes of free legal advice.
No, I know, Dan.
Now with your questions. 877-850-8585. That's 877-850-8585. Now here's your host, Attorney Jeff Vastola.
Well, good morning, everybody, and thank you so much for tuning in. I am Attorney Jeff Vastola, your host, and I am here to give you free legal advice here every Saturday morning, unless, of course, I'm on vacation, which is what happened the last 2 weekends. I have a new board operator with me this morning. Dan, good morning, and welcome to the show. Hope you're doing well. Thank you, Dan. I also do the show via Facebook Live at the same time, Dan, so that's why I was introducing myself before the intro was over. But for those of you that are listening today via the radio, please call into the show, be a part of the show, interact with us. The number to call is 877-850-8585. If you're watching by Facebook Live, then type your comments or your questions into the chat, and I will get to them as quickly as I can, oftentimes after the show, because sometimes I don't see the chat as I'm talking. This is 30 minutes of free legal advice, and you can just sit back and enjoy it, soak it all in, or more importantly, and the reason why I'm really here every Saturday morning is because if you have something going on in your world and you need some legal advice, now's the time to get it for free. Obviously, you can get legal advice all week long and very likely pay for it, but if you want to get some free legal advice, now's the time. All you have to do is call into the show or send me a chat, and I will be happy to do that. Now, here are the rules of the road. First of all, I'm only licensed in the state of Florida. Now that I'm doing this by Facebook Live and people are watching from all over the country, I have to make that clear. I can't give you advice in any state other than Florida, and I apologize for that. I was on vacation in Colorado the last 2 weeks. We go out there every summer because that's where my wife is from. And an issue came up in this small town where we go to visit every summer. And somebody pulled me aside and said, hey, can you help out? Because we've got this conflict over here. It was a civil dispute. And as much as I really wanted to, because it's in my nature to kind of dive in and help, I had to admit, I said, look, you know, the laws in Colorado could be completely different than what they are in Florida. I'm not licensed in Colorado, so no, unfortunately, I can't really help you. I could go online and I could type in the same kind of search that anybody else could type in, and I could, you know, probably come up with the same information that somebody else could come up with, but I would not be able to legally construe the law and give advice and things like that in Colorado, unfortunately. And I really have no intention of taking another bar exam. That's not something I ever want to do again. So, I'm only licensed in the state of Florida. Number two, if you ask me a question and I know the answer, that's great, because you'll get your answer right away and I don't have to do any research, although I don't mind doing that. But you don't have to wait if I know the answer. But I don't limit your questions to the things that I do Monday through Friday in my office. You can ask me anything that you want. And so if you ask me a question and I don't know the answer, well, then I'm going to take the following week to do the research, and I will give you what I consider to be an educated response to your question on the next week's program. So, I do apologize if you have to wait for your answer, but it is free. I will not send you a bill. And if you miss the show, you can always go to my website or my YouTube channel to listen to the following week's program so that you can get your answer. Those are the ground rules to the show. Pretty simple. So, as I mentioned before, the number, I got to repeat it throughout the show in case people have not written it down. If you want to call in, Dan this morning will answer your phone. He'll put you live on the air with me. That number is 877-850-8585. And of course, if you're watching on Facebook Live and you have a question, you can just type it in and hopefully I see it. As I mentioned before, the little chat box is really small on the bottom corner of my screen. So sometimes I don't see the chat as it's coming through, especially if I'm knee deep in a conversation about something. Today, we're going to be talking about some new laws that went into effect in July of this year in the state of Florida, and one specifically that is not going to go into effect because Governor DeSantis vetoed it, and it's something that I talked about several weeks ago, maybe even a few months ago, and it was new proposed legislation on personal injury protection, essentially doing away with personal injury protection the way automobile insurance is written by insurance companies in the state of Florida, and proposing a new way of doing it, which is actually the way that 48 different states are doing it now. But unfortunately, I say unfortunately because in my opinion, I think it would have been better for the people of the state of Florida to go with the new system. But there are obviously opponents to it, and they won. They convinced Governor DeSantis to veto the automobile insurance overhaul, which would have done away with what we call PIP, personal injury protection. So important news for anybody out there, especially those that are involved in personal injury claims, not just the lawyers, but also the medical providers specifically, because PIP really doesn't do anything to help or not help the lawyers at all. It's just something that we deal with. It's specifically there to make sure that medical providers providing treatment to somebody that's injured in a car accident have some form of guaranteed payment, at least up to a $10,000 max. Now, the $10,000 doesn't always go to one person or one facility. It can, depending on what's happened and how quickly they can bill for service and things like that. But it's meant to be some kind of guaranteed payment, at least up to $10,000 in medical treatment. Again, I guess more so the injured person isn't saddled with all of those medical bills. The problem with our current PIP scenario is that it is fraught with problems, including fraud. And so that's one of the reasons, probably the main reason that they were looking to do away with it, was to try to do away with all of the fraud that comes along with the PIP system. The alternative was to require mandatory bodily injury coverage. It was going to be a minimum of $25,000 of bodily injury coverage, which would have been my preference, because with bodily injury coverage, it's not earmarked specifically just for medical bills. PIP can also be used for some portion of lost wages. It also provides a $5,000 death benefit, but not more than a $5,000 death benefit. Whereas a $25,000 bodily injury policy is money that would actually go to the injured person, not to the medical providers, and can be used any way they want. They can be used for medical bills, it can be used for lost wages, and it would be a $25,000 death benefit as opposed to a $5,000 death benefit. The opposition to this PIP overhaul, which ultimately won out on the argument because they convinced Governor DeSantis to veto the bill, suggested that it was going to cost the consumers more money, and it was more insurance than what was needed. And personally, I disagree with that, but so be it. Now, that's one bill that is not going to go into effect because it was vetoed, but there are a lot of other new laws. I don't have all of them. I have a selected few that I was going to talk about today so that you are aware of some of your new laws in Florida. If you have any questions, as always, dial 877-850-8585. If you want to type in a question or even a comment into the chat, please do that. I'm watching a lot of YouTube these days. I enjoy fishing, so I watch a lot of the fishing stuff on YouTube, and even some comedians and stuff like that. The comedians not so much, but the fishing shows, they're always suggesting that you should like the show and subscribe. Honestly, I don't even know if you can subscribe to my channel. I don't know that. But if you're watching on YouTube, or if you're watching this on Facebook, give us a like, because I think that helps. That would be awesome. I'm going to look more into that and see if maybe I should be doing something so that you can subscribe. But I do have a YouTube channel. I just don't know if you even have to subscribe. I know I don't have to subscribe to the stuff that I watch. But if you're interested in doing that, that would be great, because not that I want to stop being a lawyer, but I don't know if you've seen how much these YouTube people make. It's pretty incredible. My 9-year-old son watches a YouTube show on Minecraft, and there's this teenager guy that talks nonstop, just endlessly, chatter. Drives me nuts listening to my 9-year-old son, watch this program. But apparently the amount of money that this teenager makes showing kids how to play Minecraft is mind-boggling. So I don't know. I think I'm an old dog that it's not going to learn a new trick, but we'll see. Again, call 877-850-8585 if you want to call into the show. My new board operator, Dan, will take your call. Just mind your P's and Q's and don't tell us the name of the person that you want to sue or the company that has done you wrong. And always keep in mind, I haven't mentioned this, that you can reach me anytime. You can reach me 24/7 by dialing 833-VASTOLA. That's a different number completely. That number goes to my cell phone. It's forwarded 24/7. So if you have something that's happened to you at night or on the weekend, I want to be there for you as a resource to be able to answer your questions. If you decide that you want me to help you with your incident, that's fine, assuming it's something I do and it's something I'm willing to take. But more importantly, I want you to know you're not obligated to hire me just because you use the number. It's there for you as a resource to call me, ask me any questions that you may have, and hopefully I can guide you in the right direction. That's 833 Vastola, which is 833-827-8652. All right, now if you want to find out more about me, if you don't know who I am, but you've stumbled upon this show, then go to my website. That's vastolalegal.com, VASTOLA legal.com, and you can find out more about me and my offices. We have locations in Palm Beach Gardens, Stewart, and we opened up an office down in the Keys. So let's talk about some of these laws that are now in effect in Florida. Florida's largest budget ever is now in effect. It is let me see what it says. It was in the billions. Let me see. I don't see how much it was. I remember reading the article that talked about the budget, saying it was the largest budget that Florida's ever been approved. So it talks about it's going to raise the minimum pay to state workers to $13 an hour. That's state workers. $13 an hour. $50 million to raise teacher salaries. That's great. $96 million to offer home and community-based services to more people with developmental and intellectual disabilities. $100 million to clean up old phosphate plant in Manatee County. $100 million for cleanup of one facility. Let's keep a close eye on that, Manatee County, please. Tax breaks. $196.3 million tax package. So you're going to be given like a tax holiday for back to school. This is not something new. This back to school week where you shop and it's tax free. It's been there for several years, but I don't know if it's going to be longer. Maybe it's an entire week instead of a couple of days. But that's if you're interested in finding out more about that, that's Senate Bill 7061. The budget, Florida's largest budget ever approved, is Senate Bill 2500. Online tax collections. So all of you online buyers, be aware that you are now going to start paying even more in sales tax, because in the past, Florida didn't assess a Florida state sales tax when you were buying online from Amazon and all those other websites that we all buy from. So now you're going to get hit with the seller's sales tax from whatever state they're domiciled, and you're also going to get hit with now a Florida state sales tax, which is probably 6.5% unless they've changed that. If you're interested in finding out more about online tax collections, that's Senate Bill 50. It's going to require out-of-state online retailers to collect sales tax on purchases made by Floridians. It's estimated to be an additional $1 billion a year in revenue. So let's see where that $1 billion goes. Social media, this is interesting. And of course, you can see where Governor DeSantis is aligned. Senate Bill 7072 is a bill that says that companies that violate the prohibition, which is that it's a law that seeks to bar social media companies from removing political candidates from their platforms. Sound familiar? Twitter, Trump. This social media bill, Senate Bill 7072, states that companies that violate this prohibition, so basically if a social media company like Twitter, Instagram, whatever it may be, if they remove a political candidate from their platform, they can be fined up to $250,000 a day. It could be $25,000 a day for other types of candidates. The online industry are challenging this measure in federal court, so we'll see if the federal court steps in to Florida's state court system, not the state court system, but Florida's legislature, to say that law is unconstitutional. If the federal court does that, I always kind of liken the federal court to the parents. You know, the state court system and the state legislature, they're the children. The federal system is the parents, and if the parents step in and say, that's unconstitutional, then that law will disappear. Ballot Initiatives, this is Senate Bill 1890. This is funny because it's online referred to as the anti-John Morgan law, and you may not know who John Morgan is, but John Morgan is a very influential, very successful attorney in Florida. He's now got a nationwide practice called Morgan & Morgan. Spends a lot of money on lobbying efforts, and so they've actually put into law Senate Bill 1890, which is a ballot initiative which limits contributions to political committees to $3,000. In the past, for things that interested Mr. Morgan, he would give quite a bit of money and had a lot of influence. So they're trying to get rid of individual influence over ballot initiatives. School vouchers, if you're interested in school vouchers, this is House Bill 7045, and it says that in part the law will increase a family income threshold for children to qualify for vouchers, and will remove a requirement that students had to previously be enrolled in public schools. I don't really know a lot about school vouchers, so if you have a question about it, do your research on House Bill 7045. This is interesting. I really like this one. Good morning, Terry, mother-in-law, how's Colorado? We just spent 2 weeks out there and it was wonderful. This is interesting, but in my opinion doesn't go far enough. The moment of silence in schools. This is House Bill 529. The lawmakers approved a proposal that will require public schools to hold moments of silence each day. That's all it is, just a moment of silence. Hey Jessica, welcome home to you too. Hope to see you guys very soon. It says the teachers, while prohibited from suggesting the nature of any reflection, are expected to encourage parents to discuss with children how best to use the time. So a moment of silence is going to occur every day in public schools now. The teachers are not allowed to tell the kids what to reflect upon, but the teachers are supposed to tell the parents, hey, during the moment of silence, if prayer is important to you, then have your children observe a moment of prayer during their moment of silence. That's why, in my opinion, it didn't go far enough, because in just personally, instead of a moment of silence, I think it should have been a moment of prayer. But Civics Education, which is House Bill number 5, this is one that I really don't agree with at all. I have a real problem with this one. I guess perhaps I could be swayed to suggest that it's probably a good thing for our children to be enlightened and to know what else is out there, but I don't want anything to be promoted. And this is what the Civics Education House Bill number 5 says. It says it will require high school U.S. government courses to include, quote, a comparative discussion of political ideologies that conflict with the principles of freedom and democracy, end quote, and require public schools to establish a civics education curriculum to develop an, quote, upright citizenry, end quote. I don't like that. I don't think that we should be promoting, it says a comparative discussion, so I guess it's not promotion of, but a comparative discussion of political ideologies that conflict with the principles of freedom and democracy. I don't know. I guess we should be open-minded. Intellectual freedom. This is House Bill 233, the GOP-controlled legislature. It's funny, you can see when whatever media outlet wrote this. The GOP-controlled legislature passed a measure that will require conducting surveys to assess the intellectual freedom and viewpoint diversity at state colleges and universities. I think that's probably a measure aimed at the liberal nature of most of our universities, stereotypically most of our universities. Good morning, Mary. Nice to see you. Hope all is well. This next one is one that caught a lot of attention. This is a Senate Bill 1028. Is Governor DeSantis signing off on a ban on transgender females participating in girls' and women's high school and college sports teams. So this is essentially individuals born as a male because they have biological male parts, but they relate to being a female, and so at some point they've taken on the identity of being a female, but yet physically they're a boy in high school sports turning into a man. And so Senate Bill 1028 has banned those individuals from participating in female athlete sports. Here's one, the right to farm. The farming lobby in Florida is huge, if you didn't know that. Senate Bill 88 basically is a measure that will expand the state's right to farm law and provide additional legal protections to farmers from what are known as nuisance lawsuits. And one of the other articles that I read about this is that nuisance lawsuits are filed against farmers. Now, they're called a nuisance lawsuit, which somehow suggests that the lawsuit doesn't have any merit. That's not true. Nuisance lawsuits got the moniker because they were filed to prevent a nuisance. Nuisance in the law is legal jargon for something that is violative of some other person's right. It's not the lawsuit that's a